All right, climbing gym going in this little backyard barn, and I'm just gonna show you inside before I get going what's going on. First thing to do is to just reinforce some of this structure. These guys are on 20-inch centers, and I'm gonna drop them down to 10. And then the climbing gym kind of starts here. So it's gonna go, it'll be like a channel upstairs right here, following the staircase. It'll be like a little chimney right here. And then up here in the loft on the second story is like going to be the really cool part of it. I'll put a little knee wall along this side down here, and there'll be two sections of wall, one at I think 70 degrees. It's a little bit shallower, not quite as steep, and then the other one's steeper following the roof line. All right, so the first cutting station I set up was outside, and that was to cut and then rip a bunch of 2x6s. All of these were used to reinforce that structure. You know, typically you could probably just use dimensional lumber if you're building out a garage and working on it, but in this case, this garage is old, like 1930s old, and all the lumber was different sizes and not the kind of stuff you would buy at a lumber yard these days. All right, so the first part of this project was to rebrace the lower section of the garage just so that floor doesn't bounce. Anyway, I just rejoisted it, so now they're 11-inch centers. That'll be nice if anyone comes down up there. And now this is done, it's time to go upstairs and get to framing up the climbing wall. All right, now if you look on the right here, you'll see that I built a knee wall. And I didn't include that in this video because it's not really part of the climbing gym, but it was part of the project. Now, if that freaked you out, let me just say that those were not actually collar ties. Collar ties are common in roof structures, and they do tie together your rafters. And, you know, as a general rule, collar ties are used to keep the building from succumbing to like vertical forces, like a wind or some kind of uplift. But once you got your structure all framed, you've got your cross members. In this case, they're a little bit low, but you've got your cross members. You know, most people will agree that collar ties just aren't important. Those weren't actually collar ties though. Those were just a couple of 2x4s someone put in for storage, and now they're gone. All right, so you can see that I got my base plates down. This one is going to be under part of the wall, and then that one down there. Under the other part, that's the steeper section down here. This is the less steep 75-degree section. But there's the issue of how to attach these 2x4s, and I'm going to cut a notch, or sometimes called the bird's mouth, in the end of this 2x4 here, and I'll show you what that looks like. This is just a sample. I'll cut it, and then if it works out right, I will use that same template for the rest of the 2x4s. All right, so here's that bird's mouth cut to match up to my string line. So there's really just like a couple reasons I like this notch. One is that it allows you to run a fastener here. You can also toenail like you would back on this side, and you're not going to get slippage in either direction. All right, now just a note that anywhere you see nails going in on this build, they are temporary, just used to affix things temporarily, later to be screwed or bolted. The other thing to note is that all of these walls and base plates and everything, they were all lined in with string lines. You know, measure on each end and then a string line. In my experience, if you try to measure each one of these members the same, you're going to end up with a wobbly, wonky, messed up wall, just because the rafters and the floor and everything are not perfect. You know, they're just not dialed in perfect. The way to get that wall nice and flat for your plywood, in my experience again, is to use string lines. Okay, here is where we're at with the build, just so you can kind of follow along. I've got this wall framed in here. This is going to be the less steep wall. And you can see most of these framing members are stud to stud, you know, like connected up to the rafters. But I wanted to bring this over just a few inches to tie into the staircase. We'll have the chimney up the staircase, this wall here. And then at this point, this is exactly 8 feet over. That way I can sheath it with single sheets of plywood. There's gonna be a wrap, and over here next I've got to build a knee wall so that the next wall can slope off of that up to this string line here, which is just a little bit higher than this one ceiling wise, but still gives you, if you're on the wall, some headroom, you know, like a little bit of headroom up above. Definitely one of the funkier walls I've ever framed up, but the idea here is that we'll be able to sheath it up here, have this chimney, and then wrap the climbing wall around the side. Now previously you saw me ripping the lumber using my table saw, and that works great, but I had to rip a couple more 2x4s for the top plate on this knee wall, and I just used my circular saw for that. It works pretty well. This is just the string line marking out the top of this little knee wall. That top plate is beveled so that these 2x4s, when they come in, these framing members kind of fit really nicely with the top plate. Otherwise, the top of the top plate would be kind of jutting out. All right, here's just a look to see where we're at. You can see that this steeper sloped wall is roughed in. You can see there's this little access door right here, and you can see the way this tied together. We've got the knee wall attaching to the rafters and the floor, which is all reinforced, and then this wall attaches to the knee wall. We are dangerously close to plywood. Before putting the plywood up though, it needs a little holes for the T-nuts. All right, now I went with 1/2-inch plywood for this project, and you could use a lot of different plywoods for a climbing gym build. You could do 3/4 inch, which is thicker and kind of beefier and stiffer if you wanted to. You could also use smoother stuff. I went with this because it is plenty strong, 1/2-inch. It's a 4-ply, strong plywood. It's also lightweight. You know, lighter than 3/4 inch, and that was just important given the age of the structure. And it's also affordable. This stuff's like 14 bucks a sheet. You can spend 50 bucks a sheet on plywood, and for a gym like this, it just didn't make sense. Here's a look at the T-nuts. There are a couple different kinds. Some of them actually have screw holes here, so you got to fasten them with screws. But these just pound in to secure. 2 things to think about. One is making sure your holes aren't oversized. So make sure they're a nice snug fit. And the other is to select the right side of your plywood. This is the nasty side, so the nasty side is going to be on the back. And I will link to these T-nuts down below in the description for the video. You want to find T-nuts that match up with the hardened screws that your holds come with, or if you're making your own holds, you know, buy hardened screws that match up with your T-nuts. Just a quick word about fasteners. For much of this build I've been using construction screws, but to hang these sheets of plywood I'm going to use some kind of bigger coated exterior lag screws. They have a big flat head, so they're gonna hold a lot better. You know, something like this could pull through the plywood. So this is a whole lot better, get a bigger purchase, and just be a lot more solid on those sheets of plywood. What I'll do is a first pass with my construction screws just to get it to attach to the wall. You can see the plywood has a little bit of bow to it, so I'm gonna make it nice and flat, and then I'll go through with my lag screws and get the really solid connection. And I don't show it all in this video, but a lot of this project involved drilling holes in plywood and putting the T-nuts in. That's just because there are 32 holes in each sheet, and that gives you a 1 foot spacing. That worked really well. You could go narrower, you could go more organic. But with that said, I did drill the plywood 4 sheets at a time. And this is down at the bottom of the staircase. As I mentioned before, there's kind of like a chimney where the wall starts down below, and I sheathed that up as well. Now I'm just doing a join down low here like this. I've got a 2x4 back here, and I'm attached to this piece of plywood and this piece of plywood. That'll join 2 sheets together. Studs here, studs there. Up top, I didn't do it that way just because of that overhang. It's gonna be a lot more load on the wood. Down here, this kind of joint is gonna be just fine. All right, so now I've got some good wrap around each one of these walls. Wrap here with some holds, wrap there. This guy's small just so that that maintains access to the storage area. These are just those bigger, beefier fasteners I was blabbing about earlier. With the wall all assembled with the construction screws, I'm putting these guys in just for extra reassurance, especially on the slopes that are hanging a little bit. All right, thanks for checking out the climbing wall project. You can see there are just a few holes up here. Obviously the next thing to do is just to fill it out with holes. There's just so much room for variation and whatnot. But before I go, let me just give you like a full tour so you can see the whole thing. All right, so top to bottom, you've got this kind of wraparound over here. So this is that wrap. And then this is the steepest wall section here, just the kind of killer wall right here. And that really steep one has two angles. You know, it's got the steep section and then the even more aggressive ceiling section. And then this is a main wall here. And this guy is also 8 feet wide. So it's wider than the other two. And it's got that aggressive ceiling slope up here also. And then this whole wall is built out, so there'll be all kinds of holds here. And maybe the coolest part is that we got this chimney action going on. You can chimney this thing, it'll be all full of holes, also wrap around, and I'm guessing there's gonna be a tie point up here, maybe another one up here. And then just coming up the chimney so you can kind of see how it works. The climbing system would start right here, so you kind of climb your way up. And then you've got this big old chimney to go up this vertical wall here. You can jump over to this side and then you enter into the actual walls. All right, thanks for checking it out. That ended up being a really fun project. Hit me with a comment down below if you have thoughts, questions, ideas. I've got some other DIY workout room and workout equipment related videos on this channel. So I'll link a playlist down below. And that way you can see that other stuff. But anyway, this one's really cool. I'm looking forward to this whole thing being rocked out with holds and just see the potential of this home climbing gym.